Okay, so we can start. Maybe Urs, he will join us later. Let's start with Tron. Please tell us a few words about you and your activity.
Hi, my name's Tron Black. I work for Medici Ventures. We have a portfolio of about 20 companies. I work kind of advise for some of them, some in the identity of the digital identity space, and some in the security token space. And then I'm also the lead developer for Ravencoin, which is a token that kind of works with both.
Okay, Urs, you have the floor. Please tell us a few words about you and your activity, and please unmute the mic.
Wonderful. So works. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here. My name is Urs. I'm a serial entrepreneur and investor. I'm the founder of DiSeo. DiSeo is a company incorporated in Switzerland in Crypto Valley Zug. And DiSeo is a decentralized social media and commerce ecosystem where the users exclusively own their data and where the users earn income for their data. We do this by providing each community their own social media white label platform. And we interconnect all such autonomous community platforms all together, such that all platforms share all the users and all the content together. And this means that each user can reach all users of any interconnected platform. And this makes it extremely interesting and attractive for each user. The users get their own digital identity with an integrated wallet. And this enables us to provide user-to-user payments inside the entire ecosystem. But this is the most important is we decentralize control. We give the platforms, the community platforms, the control on the content which is displayed on the platform. We give the users the control on their data and their content. And we give the advertisers the ability to reach the users with the users' consent by directly paying the users. And this makes it extremely interesting for each platform operator to receive a revenue share on each transaction. So that's a short introduction on DiSeo.
Thank you very much. Edmund, you have the floor.
All right, so I'll tell you my story super quick. So back in 2008, I was selling real estate, and the real estate market collapsed completely in the United States. And I was in college at the time. I looked at my skill set, and all that I knew how to do was file paperwork with the government. So I kept doing that, and I started a company that was forming LLCs and corporations and helping people get bank accounts. And what I realized is that banks have a ridiculous process called KYC, which is super annoying and super invasive. And even though we were successful in helping people get a bank account set up, we felt like we weren't really respecting people's data, and it was just taking a really long time. So in 2014, we started a company called KYC Chain to try to make this process a bit easier. So we went through several different accelerators, we worked with Standard Chartered Bank, and we managed to make the operational efficiency for a bank much better. We really failed in our core mission, which was to make KYC easier. So in 2017, we started a digital wallet, a self-custodied wallet called SelfKey, where a user can store their crypto, they can store their identity, and they can one-click sign up for products and services. So now you can go into SelfKey wallet, you can store your identity, and you can sign up for financial services. So that's a quick intro, and thank you. Happy to be here today.
Good. Augustin, I think it's your turn. Tell us about you and Dime.ly.
Thank you. Well, first of all, it's Dime.ly. So, because you first said Dimly, now Dime.ly, so it's just Dime.ly. Quick words about myself. I'm currently working, I'm an entrepreneur, former minister of ICT in Romania, and currently working on 2 projects. One is Dime.ly, which obviously I'm advertising here. It's a data platform helping people monetize their data. So I'm happy to see that there are a lot of efforts in this space, including DiSeo. And the second project that I'm working on is CertMe, which is self-sovereign identity using the Ethereum blockchain. We provide the KYC process outsourcing for companies, And I've helped build this product, which is now launched on the Android Play, on Google Play, and will soon follow on the App Store. And I helped build this product and also co-authored the patent that we filed with the European Patent Office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it was my fault for giving your companies different names. So, but now it's clear. Nick, you have the mic. Please tell us about you and the doc.
Well, first of all, we kept our company name very short so there could be no mispronunciations. But thanks for having me on the panel today. I'm working with Doc, and we're providing a range of tools using blockchain technology, enabling businesses and developers to create trusted credentials. And so in this context, trusted credentials can be things like academic achievement, it can be professional accreditations, licenses, or kind of identity documents. And so our vision is to replace the centralized kind of intermediaries and platforms that currently provide these solutions with users within an open public network. Doc is a small, diverse, globally distributed team, and we've been going for about 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Digital identity in general, it's a volcano subject, and nowadays we are online more than ever with no borders and sometimes with no rules, and most of the time our money are involved. So I would like to ask Edmund, how is decentralized identity useful in the context of an online marketplace?
Yeah, so when you think about some of the biggest companies that exist on the internet today, right? Amazon, their Airbnb, right? These guys are marketplaces inherently, right? They're trying to connect one side of demand to another side of supply. And when you think about blockchain as an enabling technology, there's a few different components that unlock certain value for a marketplace that was never possible before. So let's just start at the top, right? Escrow can be done with fiat currency, but with cryptocurrency, it's so much easier, it's so much cheaper, and really allows and unlocks things like micropayments, right? So previously, you need to have a certain charge that goes through on a credit card for it to make sense for marketplace. Now you can do really, really low value products and services. When you look beyond escrow, there's also the opportunity to allow sort of a decentralized reputation. So typically these platforms like Airbnb, like Amazon, are really controlling and locking down the identity and the reputation of their buyers and sellers within one platform. But when you look at things like decentralized identity, having a DID, having reputation associated with that DID, you as an owner or a custodian of that data are able to then move that reputation across different platforms. So you're not locked in to a specific marketplace, and you really are an owner of the platform as a user. So we think that reputation is sort of a very critical point. And beyond just a normal reputation where you have kind of like a star or like a rating, you can do things with smart contracts like stake a reputation. So in SelfKey, one of the things that you can do is stake your reputation, and that allows other people within the network to trust you, but also dispute if you act in not the best interest of the network. So you could actually have a decentralized arbitration that is a kind of result of something bad happening in the network. And this happens with PayPal, but with PayPal, sort of this centralized arbitration, right? So just giving examples of kind of Internet 1.0, 2.0, and now what we're seeing in Internet 3.0. And kind of the arbitration clause we think is really, really important because it kind of completes the full circle of who is in charge and who are the gatekeepers and who is the owners of this network. What we think is going to happen with blockchain and decentralized networks is really that the users become the owners of the network. And that's sort of a very important paradigm shift that we're really just starting to see take place, but I think will happen more and more. So just in conclusion, that's kind of just 4 short items. There's a lot of different ways that blockchain, smart contracts can power marketplaces, but it's definitely exciting and an interesting time to be building a marketplace on blockchain.
Okay. Thank you. It was very, very useful. And I'd like to ask Augustin, given that that decentralized digital identity includes, when it's used on marketplaces, it must have users. The technology must be populated. How do digital identity services grow, and how well do they scale?
So it's quite a tough situation, right? Blockchain enables us to deliver new ways to handle and manage identity, access to user data, management of access to user data, and so on. But so it really fits as a technology to self-sovereign identity purposes and privacy purposes and traceability of access to data purposes. But it's really difficult to actually reconcile all these blockchain ecosystems and have interoperability between them such that one user can use his identity to access multiple services. When you launch such a identity platform on the blockchain, for it to work, right, it works like a marketplace, just like you said. You need both some services in order for users to be interested in using it, and some users in order for service providers to be interested in using your mechanisms of identification or authentication. So it's really, really difficult to actually try to lift them both at the same time and try to grow in but also the B2B direction and the B2C direction at the same time. So just in mind, you know, thinking about identity and, you know, banks were mentioned, you would think that banks are the ideal client, right? The ideal target, because they already have a lot of users, a lot of clients, and they have a lot of business. And I think that would be a way to approach things, you know, go to the banks and grow from there. But in actuality, are, you know, as always, huge institutions that move really, really slowly. They lack innovation, they lack innovative spirit, and that's basically a bad way to go. So our approach at SelfKey is actually targeting startups and innovative technologies, fintechs, such as other types of startups that need KYC and in order to be able to deliver services online to their users. So I think maybe approaching this type of niche is better because it provides initial users a wide array of services that they can use and they can access with their digital identity.
Okay, good. And considering that we achieved a mass adoption, I would like to know your opinions, and an open question if you want. How can we minimize the public digital identity footprint?
Yeah, I can. I'd like to address that. So what Edmund said really resonates with me. This KYC, where we're giving the information, and it's really bad with banks, but with every crypto exchange, at least in the U.S., right? You're giving every one of them your driver's license or your passport and your social security number and your phone number and your address and everything. I mean, these aren't huge companies that have the infrastructure to keep that safe. So minimizing that, one of the things you mentioned was self-sovereign identity. So we're an investor in Evernym. It's one of the self-sovereign identity companies. So the idea is that you're the only one that's really holding it, and you can provide the absolute minimum that they require. That doesn't completely solve the problem, because then they're probably storing that. Another solution, this is a Ravencoin solution, where like what you do, where we have Edmund, where we have a one entity that's holding the KYC information. And if I get it wrong, let me know. But basically, it's trying to. There's a company called Inclusive we invest in that basically makes it easier. So you KYC with one company, and that can be shared transitively across multiple financial institutions. And we've extended that so that you can tag a Ravencoin address. And that would allow that tag to represent that Inclusive is holding that information. I'm getting an echo from somebody, but so self-sovereign identity and tagging kind of solve those problems.
Okay, and from the user's perspective, which is your advice to them in order to avoid how to lose or to make their digital identity public to everyone?
Yeah, so that it's not public to everyone? That one more time.
Oh, no, in general, considering that we are going to start to use digital identities worldwide, I would like to know if you have any advices or how customers could must manage their digital identity in order to keep it safe.
Yeah, well, I think self-sovereign identity is the best way to keep that safe and to give the absolute minimum, right? So they may not need your birthday, they may just need age verification, for example, right? So you can just minimize that as much as possible. So that would be one of the goals. And then after that, the infrastructure that we have currently, you don't have a lot of control over that, where basically you're giving it to everyone. So the solution to that would be both a piece of information that you can give to them that says someone else is holding it. That may satisfy the regulators. I mean, the reason we're doing this is for regulators, to be honest. I mean, they don't really need all of your information. They're just being told that they have to have it. So some sort of tag or signed thing that says, hey, this entity is holding it, so that if you ever need it under, regulators ever need it under, a subpoena or something like that, that it's held. That would probably be the best way to minimize it if you have to have it held. The other way is to kind of loosen the regulations, so that everybody's not trying to track what we're doing. But that's tougher.
Just to add on that, just very quickly, you mentioned the company Sovereign, and a lot of the companies in the space are building on an infrastructure called DID infrastructure, which makes them interoperable and which allows the bank or who's ever requesting to actually reach in, pull out that data with the user's request, and for that to be completely portable, completely interoperable. W3C is leading an initiative on that to kind of standardize and harmonize these, DID standards and identity resolvers so that it would work kind of across the internet. So I just think that that's a really important aspect, and sort of makes us not competitors in a way. We're almost cooperative in a way, where even though we're different for-profit companies that might be trying to achieve our own kind of personal gain in a way, as a whole, we're kind of each fighting the good fight. And it's as an industry that we kind of see the change, where we see things like, as you mentioned, a change in regulation and actually, regulatory norms moving ahead to something more modern.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Okay, we have to admit that nowadays it's cool to use blockchain everywhere, but please let us know how do we use blockchain in this area, in the digital identity area, and is it useful?
Yeah, so I'll field this one. I really think that I totally agree with you. There's way too much technology looking for a solution, rather than looking at what does blockchain really do well and just letting it do that. And in my opinion, blockchain does a really good job of storing hashes immutably. And that's kind of it, right? So with the context of decentralized identity, you can use the blockchain as a trust anchor, so that you can anchor certain claims to the blockchain. So you can say that this event for sure 100% happened at this time. And that alone is really powerful. Now you could do that with an X509 certificate, but you can't really do that in a way where multiple parties can see that and view that at any time. It's not permissionless, it's not completely open. So that's kind of a really important aspect that blockchain brings to self-sovereign identity. But more importantly, I think the question should actually be, does blockchain need self-sovereign identity, or does self-sovereign identity need blockchain, right? In my opinion, self-sovereign identity doesn't necessarily need blockchain, but Tron made a really good example earlier, which is all these exchanges, all these banks, all these different companies, specifically in the crypto space especially, are asking for our data, and they may not have the appropriate policies and procedures around that, right? We've even seen some of the biggest, most reputable exchanges and companies in the world lose our KYC and identity data. And that's because they're required by regulators to kind of ask for everything, right? Our passport, our utility bill, etc. If we use something called verifiable credentials, we can actually minimize the amount of data which is being shared. It's a much safer world for everyone involved. So really, I would make the case that self-sovereign identity doesn't need blockchain. Blockchain needs self-sovereign identity.
I would agree with that. Like, I'd like to jump in this one as well. Like, I agree with what Edmund's saying there as well, at the risk of being slightly boring. And at Doc we use, so I agree that you don't need to have DIDs anchored to a blockchain, for example, but in our case we're actually building a protocol for companies and developers to build on, and we're using it in a way where we're trying to be like a one-stop shop. So we're trying to make it so that companies and developers that don't have large teams can use our stack, and it's interoperable, so they can pick up bits of ours and use it with other stacks as well. But we are anchoring our DIDs in our blockchain because it just makes it easy. It's one less thing that they need to think about. Of course, because it's interoperable, they could look for alternate solutions. And I would definitely agree, you don't need blockchains for DIDs, but there are times I think it does make sense to have them. Okay.
So another status quo thing is that we are talking about blockchain because or thanks to cryptocurrency. Should cryptocurrency transactions be associated with the digital identity? Please unmute your mic.
Yeah, I would say no. One of the things that cryptocurrency was designed, the way it was designed, is every transaction is public and your identity is not. And so this mismatch of trying to associate identity back to it kind of breaks it. And so, because now it's like, I know who it is and I know everything they've done. So I would argue that needs to be unlinked somehow, back to its original design.
I'd agree. I think like most people in this space are probably, I would guess, are more privacy advocates than the other way. And I think that it would be interesting actually to hear if anyone else in the panel thinks that they should be, because I'd be totally on board with what Tron's saying. I think if we lose the ability to have in effect a digital cash, I think it becomes a very dangerous society that we live in. One where literally every transaction, everything that you do online can be tracked. And I think we're kind of going into the Brave New World territory, which is pretty scary stuff.
Yeah, but I think this is the way we are heading to. I don't think we get regulatory approval worldwide when this is not linked. So my personal opinion is it must be linked to be compliant with each country, because I don't believe in global distribution without any control. So in our case is we are connecting the digital identity to a wallet, and we are integrating local regulated banking, financial institution, banks and wallet providers into to be attached with a digital identity. That means through the digital identity process, we are identifying where the user is located, where he's a resident. Based on the residency, he receives a list of available financial institutions which are available to him at his local regulatory compliant location. And then he picks one, and then we will adhere to any regulations which is necessary there. We go even a step further. In our solution, we are offering each country to impose a tax on a transaction happening to their citizens, their residents. And because what we do is we are separating the power, we are giving the power of operating a network to the community owner. We're giving the power to control the user data connected to the digital identity to the user and only to the user. And we're giving the ability of advertisers to directly access the user data, but only with the full consent of the user and by only paying the user. And the beauty here is because we relate a wallet to the digital identity, we can directly make the advertiser wallet to wallet pay the users for such a transaction. And then on top, we are providing the governments the ability to impose taxes. And so this is a fair sharing of revenues across an entire ecosystem. And then we don't have any tax holes anymore, and no country is circumvented. And each country can impose all the rules they want to impose according to their legislation.
Good to know. And talking about different regulations, I will pretend that today or for the moment that I'm not a lawyer, and I would like to know how an action performed by, in your vision, how an action performed by a user that used the digital identity may bind him.
If I may, and also to build upon the previous answers. So I think that the old world of governments and regulations and banks is not going to die before it leaves an imprint on this new one, right? So we need to actually see why regulation is needed, why it's done the way it's done, and maybe have the best of both worlds in the blockchain realm, right? Maybe for some amounts of transactions, you can have them anonymously, but exceeding some amounts, should be linked to some form of verifiable identity. For us at SelfKey, we actually want to, one of the milestones that we have in the near future is to build a wallet where we can associate digital assets with an ADAS compliant identity and an ADAS compliant identity that can also perform qualified digital signatures with respect to the ADAS regulation, such that any sort of asset, be it financial or non-financial, on a blockchain transacted from a wallet or a blockchain address associated with a SelfKey address actually has legal binding value and offers ownership rights of said asset to the identity that holds the wallet.
Okay. At the end of the day, more or less, all it's about money. So I would like to ask Nick, what is the most innovative monetize of identity solution you have came across?
And I kind of pose this question, also interested in what the other guys in the panel have, because with identity services, what I see is the use cases and the number of users using identity services increasing fairly rapidly. But it's a difficult thing at times to monetize. So in the context of this question, I was thinking about identity solutions, not just with the IDs themselves, but everything that makes up your digital identity. So that can be things like your social identity that's on Facebook, shopping patterns and things like that, and credit agencies. And one project, and I'm not even going to kind of shill my own project here. There was another one I'd come across that was interesting. It's been going, I think it runs on Ethereum, called Wibson, which is a decentralized marketplace for individuals to securely and anonymously sell their private data that's actually been validated, which I thought was quite a kind of interesting way to try and monetize, in effect, identity. I was wondering if the other panel guests had come across anything that they thought was really novel and interesting.
Okay, thank you. Very, very interesting. Unfortunately, our time is over. Thank you very, very much for your input, and for the audience, if you have more questions, feel free to address them directly to my colleagues of this panel, because I'm sure that they will be there to answer to your questions. So thank you very much, and take care of your identities.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.